Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Guild Wars 2 in 2023. Today we are talking about the newest Living World episode, What Lies Within. This is a pretty important episode, not only because it kind of is the capstone to the post-End of Dragons story, which admittedly was kind of two episodes, but it's also the capstone to the way of doing Living World for Guild Wars 2 in terms of the future, because after this, from what I understand, we're moving into these new expansions that are different. They're more frequent, they're probably lighter on content, and they're shipping things differently, which, if you've been here since the start of Guild Wars 2, is not something that hasn't happened in the past. They are in fact the game company that I think changes up exactly how they do business the most out of every game company, both in a positive way because they're not afraid to change, but in a negative way because they almost change too much. But with all that said, we're going to talk about the episode. We're going to talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like, and what I think it means for the game going forward. Just before all that, though, I should mention I am a Guild Wars 2 or ArenaNet partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, I'll say the good, I'll say the bad. You'll see all of it in this video. What it does mean, though, is that there are two sponsored links in the description section below. One of them for if you'd like to try the game for free, and the other if you'd like to purchase the expansions that are currently out. Using either of those links as a referral link will help out the channel and support me as a creator. With all that said, though, let's jump into the video. So this Living World episode is called What Lies Within, and I believe the last one was called What Lies Beneath, so very related. And let's set the scene here first, because What Lies Beneath, or the episode before this that came out a few months ago, was met with pretty in terms of feedback. You know, there wasn't a lot there. It did add a new map, which was great. There were certainly some elements of the story that I really liked. It was talking about fresh story idea, I think, is maybe the most important thing here, because we're moving away from Elder Dragons. We're developing a lot of these characters that we met in Cantha. So in terms of new strides in the Guild Wars 2 universe, it did a lot of really great work. In terms of delivering content on par with what we've seen in past Living World episodes, I would say it probably didn't hit the mark for a lot of people. And this was kind of an issue because at the time, you know, the future of the game wasn't entirely certain. Whereas this episode, you know, it comes out and we've recently had a blog about the fact that they're going to be doing new expansion models that are quicker, a bit thinner, but much more consistent in terms of when they come out. And I would say that is something that Guild Wars 2 has had issues with in the past, is consistency. And one thing that I want to say before I even get down any negative paths here is that they're being a lot more transparent and communicative in terms of what they're hoping to do moving forward, which I think, you know, no matter what game company you come from, that's always a positive to see that they are communicating. So with the scene set, we have this newest release come out. I'm one of those players who only really plays when a new piece of content comes out. I know there's a lot of people who play Guild Wars 2 like that because it is such an easy thing to jump back into. And the first thing I met with is a whole bunch of messages that I have to listen to. And I kind of guessed this while listening to it, but I confirmed online. It seems like these messages were released every so often between when the last episode played and when this episode plays, and kind of gives you little tidbits of the story. And I think this is a really cool thing. It felt kind of weird as someone who's coming back just for this episode, having to sit there and listen to 10, chapters in a row. But at the same time, I don't know how they would have done that different. And I think it was probably very engaging and fun for people who were playing the game, the whole time between then. So, it was just a little bit of an odd thing to be, thrust into. The weirdest part was you get this notification about the new story and you go to push it, and then it says, but wait, you're going to lose progress in the past story. And you're like, wait, didn't I finish that? So I think the way they introduced the idea that there is this content that you haven't done could have been done a little bit better. Because I could very easily have just skipped it and gone to the new one, but then I would have missed all that. So I don't know. It's kind of on me. It's kind of, there could have been better ways to do it. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna bog down into it too much. Let's talk about the scope of the story in total. So we're dealing with kind of the demon that was found beneath the new map. This is a lot of what's set up in the first portion of the story. The second portion of the story is us getting a rune that allows us to, I think, seal the demon, it would seem like, and then bring it down there and use it on the demon. Essentially, the first half of this story is us going around talking to people and doing a lot of collection games. It's, you know, something that Guild Wars 2 does pretty well. I really like the conversations, and a collection game is very typical of any MMO, but I feel like it was almost overused in the first section of this story. Like, you didn't have to use, like, I'm pretty sure I had my phone in one hand and like was using the keyboard in the other, and I was just very sideline listening to the story. It was not much combat, not much to really sink your teeth into. The second portion of this mission is when things escalated in terms of combat. We go back down, we confront the demon, and we have this really long, kind of drawn out sequence of running away from the demon until we get to a point where we can fight it and confront it. And before I get to the parts I don't like about this, the things I do like is this demon seems to prey on emotion and bring up memories of the past. So throughout this entire thing, we're getting backstory for a lot of characters because we're seeing a lot of their memories. But we're also getting, you know, to meet with a lot of the old characters from our past. You know, we had like Air there, we had Traherne and stuff like that. So some characters that we've witnessed throughout story be pretty major points do get brought up, which I think is really important and at a really good time in Guild Wars 2's life where we're jumping to this next branch of story. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The actual combat and like sense of escape was not really there. The demon itself is kind of loose on your party the entire time, and it really isn't doing much damage to anyone, which makes it feel like it's not much of a threat. I think the game could have done a much better job of having, you know, these seals that actually do seal the demon behind it more visibly, I guess. And it trying to break through it, and you can kind of see like it breaking through the past seals as you keep going. So it has more of a sense of fear to it. One of the dungeons in WoW actually that I drew parallels with this story is Halls of Reflection. It's a very interesting dungeon for WoW where the first part of it's pretty traditional, but the second portion you're running away from the Lich King, and it's this long corridor. It's in ice because it's ICC, and you have the Lich King just steadily walking behind you very menacingly with like a wall of death essentially. And I think something like that would have been much more interesting for this if it was more of a time sensitive situation as opposed to something that you felt like you could just like wait forever and it's not like this demon's gonna go anywhere or do anything too bad. So that's kind of the chase scene. The big fight at the end was also fairly lackluster. I understand it's one person, you know, it's designed to be an individual dungeon, so it can't be that crazy. But it's very rinse and repeat. You go around in the circle, break these crystals, use a special skill, and then have to kill one ad. It's capped off with a really cool situation of seeing your memories and stuff like that, which I think is really fun. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I felt much about this demon. I think the first chapter did a lot more to make me interested in the demon, and I just feel like this chapter didn't deliver very much in terms of actually like, oh, that was interesting. More to that, I think if you looked at both of these chapters, it feels like if they were combined, you'd have maybe a little bit heftier of a normal, heftier than normal Living World episode, but not much. I feel like it more feels like these kind of were one chapter that got cut in half to last longer, is what it feels like. It might have been the best decision. It might have been better that than having, you know, a really long period between whenever it dropped and the next expansion or whatever. So I completely get that. The very last part of this episode though is my favorite. And it's something, once again, that I think Guild Wars 2 does better than almost anyone else, is very down-to-earth moments with conversations. So we're essentially going to a date, like a group date, I guess, where we're all going to a restaurant and we get to pick one of the NPCs we've interacted with to be our partner. So we're introduced to a lot of choice in terms of who we bring, and then when we actually go to sit down, we're actually in the sit down meal together, which is really cool, because a lot of other games I feel like would have just done, a cinematic, or like you'd be very passive. But you're sitting there and you get to choose questions to ask, get to choose different things to do, and you really feel like you're a part of it. They've definitely made it so there was a lot of different ways the character could bring these conversations, and I think adding things like that really make scenes that are great to push the story along, but less engaging in terms of the content you're doing. Like, it makes me think of the fetch quest that we do at the start of this. I really enjoyed the sit down dinner more because I felt like I was engaging with the story and stuff like that. So I thought that was a highlight of the entire episode. But yeah, you do that dinner and then boom, you're done. That's it. That's everything. You can go to Twitter and you can see that they have an announcement coming soon, but it doesn't even really tell you very much. It felt very lackluster after a pretty lackluster episode. Okay, my expectations, in fairness, were set by Guild Wars 2. I think it was the end of Living World Season 2, which would have led us into Heart of Thorns. But we have the last mission of that episode that automatically plays a cinematic of Scarlet setting off her device. I guess it would have been the end of Season 1, maybe? Whatever it was, sets off the device and wakes up Morjamoth. Like, it's one of the coolest cinematics that was ever made by Guild Wars 2, and it automatically plays at the end of the Living World episode to instill hype in their audience. Whereas now, as a fan of the game, I'm like, I guess it's cool that there's new stuff coming, but I have nothing really exciting right now, or nothing to hold on to, nothing to chew on, right? It's hype and speculation that really pushes MMOs forward. You have to be excited to see what's coming next, and that keeps you engaged with what's currently happening as well. But yeah, long story short, I think the chapter fell flat for a lot of people. If you were someone who was just looking at it as an episode of Living World to go play, I don't think there's much to do. Certainly not much more than what was introduced in the last episode. If you're looking at it as something to kick off the next expansion and this new exciting era for Guild Wars 2, I also don't think it did much there. Both of those points said, I think the new model for Guild Wars 2 of very consistent, reliable, shorter, yearly, if it ends up being yearly expansions, makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot they can do. I think the game, for all of the positivity in it, has suffered from, not being consistent with how it does content. And if this is what they feel like they can do consistently, I think it is absolutely a great direction to go. But those are my thoughts. I know this always gets kind of rambly when it's Guild Wars 2. I'm very excited to play the next expansion. I'll certainly be there going through it, so I'm excited to see what comes next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode if you did play through this in Guild Wars 2, or if you have any speculation about what the new expansion could be about. I'd love to hear about that too. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.